One night, back in 07, I went over to a friend's house for a sleepover. We had some fun, a lot of laughs, we could barely get to sleep, usual sleepover stuff. But the next morning, a few of us had woken up, and I vividly remember all of us staring at his TV because he had two things: a Wii and a copy of LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga. From that moment, I fell in love. I also got a turkey in Wii bowling, so yeah, I'm that guy. 2 years later, my family got their own Wii, and along with another game that shall remain nameless for now, but I'll probably talk about at some point in the future because it's one of my favorite games of all time, my mom got us that same LEGO game that I fell in love with 2 years earlier. I did everything this game had to offer. I got all the gold bricks, I got all the characters, all the extras, I maxed out the stud counter, I incited riots at Mos Eisley Cantina, and now it lives in the favorites section of my Steam library, forever immortalized with the likes of Half-Life Alyx and Shovel Knight Treasure Trove, while I sit here and lecture you about it in a YouTube video. Welcome back. So, after playing through the first two LEGO Star Wars games, I will admit, I was not very excited to play the complete saga again. For one, I was burnt out on LEGO Star Wars, and having to play what is essentially just the first two games consolidated into one did not sound very appealing, and on the other hand, I had never played through LEGO Star Wars 2 before, unless you want to count the GBA version. And after playing it, I almost wish I hadn't. Each game had its problems, but LEGO Star Wars 2 in particular was a complete train wreck if you were trying to go for everything, and I eventually gave up because the lackluster rewards weren't worth it for all the trouble you had to go through. I think the GBA version may actually be better. On top of that, I started to think, is the complete saga really not as good as I remember? And I didn't want to have to find out if that were the case. That was until I found myself working on and off on the LEGO Star Wars 2 video, struggling to find the motivation to continue, while also having to deal with a crazy school and work schedule at the same time. I had been feeling down, so one night, on a whim, I fired up the complete saga to record some footage, and I was proven wrong. It's actually even better than I remember. Turns out, LEGO Star Wars 2 really is just bad. Now, let me tell you something. Before the days of the slap a few games together and charge $60 for the bare minimum type of situation, which I like to call the Super Mario 3D All-Stars method, game compilations were good. It's actually kind of hard to categorize this game, because it's not really a compilation, it's more so two games fused together, but I also wouldn't call it a remaster because it has entirely new content, so maybe it's a remake, but I wouldn't call it a remake either because it's not remade from the ground up. If that sounds confusing, then you understand perfectly. The point is, being hard to categorize is not a bad thing unless you're Death Stranding, because some games are so unique and bring enough new to the table that it's difficult to find some sort of box to put them in, and the complete saga is no exception. The game goes above and beyond to provide the definitive Star Wars experience. Not LEGO Star Wars, Star Wars. If you go up to a random person on the street and ask them what the best Star Wars game is, you'll probably get a few different answers. Rogue Squadron, Battlefront 2, Jedi Outcast, what are you talking about? But I guarantee that someone out there will tell you it's LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, and it's my job to figure out why that is, especially considering the first game was an alright Star Wars game but not amazing, and the second was admittedly pretty poopy. So what happens when you bring these two games together? In the case of the movies, you send a whole other message. If you were to describe the original trilogy, you might say it's about a boy with a gift leading a group of rebels trying to take down an evil empire. And if you were to describe the prequels, you might say they tell the story of a boy with a gift whose entire life revolves around fulfilling a prophecy. But together, they tell a different story. They tell the story of a family with a gift, one that can change the fate of the galaxy and the influence of the world they live in and the people around them on how they choose to use it. When you look at the bigger picture, you can see how Star Wars as a whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and so maybe we can look at the complete saga in the same way. It might be valuable to see how the strengths of each game individually, when brought together, can enhance the overall experience, as opposed to just looking at what I don't like and saying, how can we fix this? Although we will be doing some of that because LEGO Star Wars 2 is a bit of a train wreck. I think when people talk about playing the LEGO games as kids, they're talking from a place of nostalgia. A lot of what they appreciate about these games is less about the gameplay itself and more a result of things like the humor, or the LEGO charm as I like to call it, or more generally speaking, how they adapt the movies. While the gameplay is equally as important, if not more, this is a perfectly valid way of analyzing these games because half the appeal of LEGO Star Wars is that it's made up of plastic bricks, and if we look at how the complete saga handles the task, it takes everything that was great about the first two games and turns it up to 11. At purely face value, this applies to the overall presentation of the game. I always knew it looked better than the first two, but I'm not sure I ever realized how much better it looks. It's got a shiny new coat of paint, literally. Everything's very shiny, the way LEGO should be. All the lighting effects look way nicer now, character models are less blocky, go figure, and that weird ghosting effect from LEGO Star Wars 2 is mostly non-existent this time around.
No, unacceptable!
It's a much greater visual bump than I remember it being. There was also this thing in the first two games where if a character was far enough away from the camera, it would switch to a lower poly model of that character to save resources, similar to Mario 64, and that was also removed. This all applies to the cutscenes as well because they actually run in real time. This does not excuse the fact that they're still unskippable, but whatever. This game still looks great on a modern computer. But these games don't just run on style, they have substance as well, and the complete saga has a few more tricks up its sleeve. Loading into the game for the first time, you'll see that Mos Eisley Cantina, the game's hub, is different from the one in LEGO Star Wars 2. Instead of having 3 large areas around a circular bar, the cantina comprises a smaller room with 6 doors leading to each episode, and each of these rooms is themed around that episode. For instance, Episode 3's room is based on Mustafar, and Episode 5's is based on Hoth. To the right of these doors is an extra door, which we'll come back to, and to the left is the 2-player arcade, which lets you set up matches between you and another player, where you can compete to see who can get suds the fastest, or kill the most enemies, or just fight to the death. This is a super cool addition for people who enjoy playing these games with a friend. It adds a little bit of competition, and it even has a bunch of new maps to mess around in and reenact battles from the movies. I really like the Senate, although it kinda makes me wish that you could go there in single player. The Bounty Hunter room has been moved outside the cantina, which is also much smaller and more streamlined. The mini-kits are all in one place instead of having to walk in a huge circle all the way around the cantina in the last game. It's 2007 now, circles are out. I much prefer this smaller cantina now that I don't have to spend so much time walking, but ultimately, the cantina doesn't matter as much as something else that really bothered me about LEGO Star Wars 2. I'm happy to report that the gold bricks have seen a major improvement since the last game, the way they should have been from the beginning. For the sake of simplicity, let's say there are a couple different types of gold bricks in the game. The ones you get from playing the main levels, we'll call these level bricks, and the extra ones you find everywhere else, we'll call these bonus bricks. Let's also use total bricks when we're talking about both. Now it's time for a little math. LEGO Star Wars 2 had 99 total bricks, 18 levels, and 4 bricks per level. 1 for beating the level, 1 for finding all the mini-kits, and 2 for getting True Jedi, once in story and once in free play. 18 levels times 4 bricks per level is 72 level bricks, which leaves 27 bonus bricks in the rest of the game. The complete saga has twice the number of levels, 36, and 160 total bricks. If each level in the complete saga had 4 bricks, like they do in LEGO Star Wars 2, that would mean there would be a whopping 144 level bricks overall, which would only leave 16 bonus bricks left over, so to avoid that problem, there are now only 3 bricks per level instead of 4. 1 for beating the level, 1 for finding all the mini-kits, and 1 for getting True Jedi. By removing the double True Jedi requirement, that leaves us with 52 bonus bricks. That's almost exactly twice as many bonus bricks as LEGO Star Wars 2, which means less sitting through unskippable cutscenes because you missed True Jedi in story mode, and way less tedium overall. This is a massive improvement for such a small change. I love math. Speaking of True Jedi, the stud requirements themselves are way more balanced this time around. I'm looking at you, Hoth Battle. Super Story also doesn't give you gold bricks anymore, so you don't have to do it unless you want 100%. I like the idea of showing a completion percentage, but I would have preferred if Super Story didn't count towards that and showed your high scores on a leaderboard instead, because it still kinda sucks. I think that's my main complaint this time around. On the other hand, there's the new challenge mode where you have to find 10 Smurf Blue mini-kits in a level within the time limit. This also doesn't give you gold bricks, but I wouldn't mind if it did because it's a great way of breathing new life into the levels that you've played already. Now you may be wondering, where did all those extra gold bricks go? Well, there are more bounty hunter missions and more gold bricks in the shop, but that doesn't cover all of them. In fact, we've only scratched the surface, and there's a lot more new content to uncover. There are 2 new vehicle levels that were added, Anakin's Flight from The Phantom Menace and Bounty Hunter Pursuit from Attack of the Clones. Both of these levels were planned to be in the first game but were ultimately cut. Anakin's Flight because it would have made Episode 1 drag on too long, and Bounty Hunter Pursuit due to time constraints. Both of these levels were reimagined with the vehicle mechanics from the second game. Bounty Hunter Pursuit was added to the start of episode 2, and remember that extra room in the cantina? Well, Anakin's flight was set aside as an extra level only accessible through a gold brick door in that room. This room actually has a bunch of other rewards for getting enough gold bricks, like the A New Hope level from the first game.
No, please don't kill me, please, no, I don't want to die, please don't kill me, please don't.
Relax, man.
And the Lego City level from the second. There's also New Town, a brand new level that's basically another Lego City where the goal is to get 1,000,000 studs. You'll find the rest of the game's gold bricks in this room. There are also some new characters. Plo Koon, Ayla Sakura, Lama Su, Ton Wei, R2Q5, Watto, Zam Wessel, Boss Nass, Dexter Jetster, and Captain Tarples. Most of them are just fun bonus characters that don't add a whole lot, and some of them add literally nothing, but I would be lying if I said I didn't ever play as them. There's some of my favorite new additions. These are the kind of things that TT Games didn't have to include, but they added them anyway, cause why not? I think they know that people enjoy seeing obscure characters, and they put just as much love into them as they would someone like Luke or Han, hence characters like Yaddle in the Skywalker Saga. Also, he's not new, but shout out to my boy IG88, this man can do anything that a droid can, and he's a bounty hunter. Another plus to having more characters means more character parts for the customizer, and this goes for the prequel characters as well. This time around, I tried making Kyle Katarn from Jedi Outcast, and I think he turned out kinda meh, but Gun Alex is back too. I didn't want him to feel left out. Credit where credit is due, one thing LEGO Star Wars 2 got right was the actual creative aspect of LEGO when it comes to building and making fun characters, so it's nice to see that same attention to detail applied to older content as well. And I don't just say that because of the character customizer. For instance, Revenge of the Sith actually uses music from the movie now. If you'll recall, the first game came out before Revenge of the Sith, so the soundtrack hadn't been finished yet, and they just reused music from the other two movies for episode 3. I'd rather not get claimed by Disney, so you'll have to take my word for it, but it's there now. And those aren't the only changes to the prequels. Most levels have been updated with the new mechanics from the second game, like pushing blocks and building, and they've also added new power bricks to them as well. They're not all that different, but they fit in a little better with the rest of the game, and it's certainly an improvement overall. Even the pod race and gunship cavalry, which have been updated to fit with the rest of the vehicle levels, are actually done well as opposed to the ones from the last game. They somehow found a way to make gunship cavalry play like Hoth Battle and make it actually fun. It's much less annoying to not have to deal with the constant roadblocks and probe droids latching onto the bombs, and if you want, you can still play the original versions of those levels in the bonus room if you want to. I've come to realize that my main issue with the first two games is pacing. Both games felt bogged down for very trivial reasons. In the first game, it was slow and awkward combat, and in the second, it was the vehicle missions, the flawed gold brick system, and also the combat because they didn't really fix any of the problems I had with it from the first game. The complete saga aims to address these issues head on, but how do you do that without fundamentally changing the gameplay? Well, there are a few ways to do that, and one of them is to tweak the stud economy. Shop prices have been changed across the board. For instance, Score Times 2 costs 2,000,000 studs in LEGO Star Wars 2, but in the complete saga, it's only 1.25 million. So I don't have to go replaying the same levels over and over and over in order to get enough studs for a single extra, and then have to do it all over again once I buy it because I spent all my frickin' studs on it. Okay, so that's one thing, but what about the levels themselves? This time around, there's a new save and exit option in free play, so once you're done collecting stuff, you don't have to finish the level to keep everything you collected. I think this is one of the best quality of life additions they've made. Replaying entire levels over and over because you missed something, especially in LEGO Star Wars 2, was the absolute worst, so I'm really glad they fixed that issue. And in terms of the slow gameplay, well, you could just give the player a power-up. I realize that sounds like a pretty lame fix, but hear me out. The power-up is a brand new item that does pretty much exactly what it says. It makes you stronger, gives you fast build, fast force, stud magnet, invincibility, and increases the range of the Jedi slam attack, basically making you completely overpowered for a short period of time, and the game always gives you one when it's most convenient. Not only does this improve combat, it speeds up otherwise frustrating sections of the game, like in Defense of Kashyyyk when you're on the beach and there are infinite enemies spawning from the water. Again, it may sound kind of lame, but you only get a short time to make use of it, so you have to make that time count and it keeps you more engaged. It's basically a speedrun button, and the devs can just throw one in a level wherever it might be useful. Oh, and they also put them in the vehicle levels, which improves the pacing of those ones too, although Hoth Battle and Speeder Showdown still suck. I will die on that hill. Now, I will admit, it would have been cool if it wasn't just lying there for you to pick up, like if there was some kind of meter that you could fill up as you play through the level, and then once it's fully charged you can release it to get a buff, or maybe you could spend a certain amount of studs to get it, but as it stands, this is legitimately one of my favorite additions in any LEGO game. Oh, what's that? They got rid of it? They never used it in another game ever again? Okay. Initially, I thought I was going to have a lot less to say about this game, considering I've covered the bulk of its content in my last 2 videos, but as I've played through it again, I've realized that TT Games has gone to some great lengths in order to make it even better than the first 2 combined, and that's the thing about the Complete Saga. They could have just slapped together those games and called it a day, but they took a step back, looked at some of their flaws, and said, how can we improve the overall experience? And it's that love and care that people remember the most about the Complete Saga at the end of the day. Not the first game for pioneering the genre, and not the second for all its new features. There's a reason that the Complete Saga is the only Star Wars game in the entire history of Star Wars that lets you play through the first 6 movies. It outdoes the first 2 games in every way. There's no other way to put it. This game, at least for its time, provided the definitive LEGO experience. It ended up standing out on its own because not only did all the little improvements it made on top of the already established LEGO formula set a standard for the future of the LEGO formula, but all the new extra content gave me a reason to come back to it years down the line as well, and so I'm very glad I decided to take a closer look at it. Here's hoping the Skywalker Saga can live up to the legacy of this love letter to Star Wars. Oh wait, what's this?
Adventure breaks new ground.